The wind tore through the night with a razor's edge, howling as it clawed its way through the splintered cracks of the old cabin perched on the edge of Montana's wild frontier. It carried whispers of danger, a primal warning woven into the storm's relentless fury. Inside, the air was thick with the earthy scent of simmering venison stew, its steam curling upward to dance with the faint hum of a battered space heater. The heater's flickering glow painted long, jagged shadows across the worn hardwood floor, where scratches and scuff marks told tales of decades past. Emma Carter, a wiry 22-year-old with a quiet resilience etched into her sharp features, stood at the stove. Her spoon moved in absent, hypnotic circles through the pot, while her other hand brushed a tangled strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. Her hazel eyes flicked to the clock on the wall, 5:58 p.m., its ticking a faint heartbeat against the storm's roar. Beyond the frost-laced window, the world dissolved into a blinding sea of white, snow spiraling down in heavy, chaotic waves, burying the yard and smudging the dark silhouette of the pine forest beyond. Somewhere out there, lost in that frozen chaos, her 4-year-old sister Sophia played near the garden fence, or so Emma hoped. The little girl was a wisp of a thing, bundled in layers of patched wool and fleece, her red mittens a fleeting splash of color as she knelt in the snow, shaping what might have been her third snowman of the evening. Emma's instinct was to keep her in sight at all times. Sophia's world was softer, stranger than most. Diagnosed with a mild developmental disorder a year ago after a string of quiet, confusing doctor visits, she navigated life differently. Unfamiliar voices unnerved her, sudden changes threw her into silent panic, and loud sounds could unravel her fragile calm. Emma had learned her rhythms, her limits, her gentle sweetness, and carried them like a second skin. But tonight, exhaustion gnawed at her. A headache pulsed behind her eyes, fueled by a day of squinting at work emails on a cracked laptop screen, and time had slipped through her fingers like the snow piling outside. She hadn't realized how long Sophia had been out there, alone in the growing dark. A vicious gust slammed into the cabin, rattling the windows in their warped frames and sending a shiver down Emma's spine. She flinched, the spoon clattering against the pot's edge as she turned toward the door. A thread of unease tightened in her chest, sharp and cold. Her hands, still slick with broth, trembled, not from fear, not yet, but from a creeping dread she couldn't name. She snatched a faded kitchen towel, wiped them hastily, and crossed the room in 3 quick strides. Pushing the door open, she stepped onto the sagging porch, the icy wind biting at her exposed skin. "Sophia!" she called, her voice thin and uncertain, swallowed almost instantly by the storm's growl. No answer came. The yard stretched out before her, a blank canvas of white where tiny footprints and scattered snow toys had once marked Sophia's presence. Now, it was eerily still, untouched, as if the world had erased her sister entirely. Emma's eyes darted to the fence line, no flash of red mittens, no small figure crouched by the overgrown bush where Sophia loved to invent secret caves for her toy bear. Just snow, endless and silent, piling higher with every heartbeat. Her pulse hammered in her throat. "Sophia, sweetheart!" she shouted, louder now, her voice cracking against the wind. Nothing. Her boots crunched over the ice-slick porch steps as she stumbled into the yard, her breath fogging in frantic bursts. She scanned the expanse wildly, squinting through the swirling flakes. Then she saw them, faint, smudged footprints trailing toward the wood's edge, already half buried under fresh snow. Her stomach twisted into a knot. Sophia had never wandered that far, not alone, not ever. Panic surged through her like wildfire, and she broke into a run, her boots slipping on the frozen ground. "Sophia!" she cried, the name tearing from her raw throat. The snow thickened, a suffocating curtain of white that blurred the trees and sky into a single, shapeless void. She pushed forward, driven by survival and a fierce, unyielding love, her mind racing with images of her sister lost, cold, afraid. She'd only looked away for a moment, checking an email, stirring the pot, but that fleeting lapse had opened a door to something she couldn't fathom. Out in the storm, Sophia trudged through the drifts, her small boots sinking with each uncertain step. The wind lashed at her cheeks, stinging like 1,000 tiny needles, and she sniffled, dragging her sleeve across her nose. Her mittens, soaked and stiff with ice, clung to her hands as she clutched her stuffed bear, a ragged little thing with worn ears and a crooked smile stitched by their late grandmother. "Emma," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread lost in the storm's deafening roar. No one answered, just white, everywhere, pressing in on her from all sides. She turned in slow, wobbly circles, her wide eyes searching for the cabin's familiar outline, the fence, anything to anchor her. But the snow had swallowed it all, leaving her adrift in a featureless void. She hadn't meant to go so far. Something had caught her eye, a flicker of movement, maybe a bird darting through the trees, or the way the snow glittered like stars under the fading light, and she'd followed it, giggling to herself, lost in her own quiet wonder. Now, that spark of joy had guttered out, replaced by a bone-deep chill that clawed through her layers and settled in her chest. Her legs buckled, and she pitched forward into a snowbank, her face sinking into the cold. For a moment she didn't move, her breath shallow, her lashes tipped with frost. "Emma!" she whimpered again, curling into a tight ball the way her sister had taught her during thunderstorms, knees up, arms in, like a little hedgehog. But this wasn't thunder, sharp and fleeting. This was an endless, suffocating silence, a weight that pressed down on her small frame until her breathing slowed and her eyelids fluttered. She was so tired, so cold. The snow kept falling, layer upon layer, and the forest closed around her like a living thing, its branches creaking under the storm's relentless assault. Far beyond the reach of Emma's desperate cries, a shadow cut through the drifts, low to the ground, powerful, deliberate. Rex, a retired K9 German shepherd with a grizzled coat and eyes that held the weight of 1,000 missions, had been missing for 3 days. The townsfolk whispered he was gone for good, lost to the blizzard that had claimed weaker souls. But Rex wasn't just any dog. He was a creature of loyalty and instinct, forged in the crucible of search and rescue operations, avalanches, collapsed buildings, wilderness hunts. His broad paws pressed forward with purpose, his breath steaming in steady puffs as he navigated the snow-choked terrain, nose low, ears twitching against the wind. Most thought survival was beyond him in this weather, but Rex knew better. He knew how to endure. More than that, he knew how to find what was lost. The wind shifted, carrying a faint, fragile scent, something human, something small. A child. His pace quickened, muscles rippling beneath his frost-dusted fur as he sliced through the drifts with the hunter's precision. The trail was weak, scattered by the storm's chaos, but it called to him like a beacon. He wove through tangled underbrush and snapped branches, his senses honed to a razor's edge, until he reached a tiny shape curled at the base of a towering fir, still, too still. A low, mournful whine rumbled in his throat as he nudged her with his snout. Sophia didn't stir. Her face was pale, her lips tinged blue, her bear clutched tight against her chest. Rex circled her once, his breath warm against the icy air, then pressed his bulk against her trembling form. His thick fur enveloped her like a living shield, a testament to his unyielding loyalty. He lowered his head, breathing slow and steady, willing his warmth into her fragile body. Every few minutes he lifted his muzzle and barked, short, sharp bursts that pierced the storm's din. He didn't know if anyone could hear, didn't know if help was near, but he barked anyway, his voice a lifeline thrown into the void. Then he settled beside her again, his head resting near hers, eyes half closed but alert, ears flicking at every gust. He'd found her, and his connection to her was absolute. He wouldn't leave, not now, not ever. The night deepened, its stillness brutal and unforgiving. The wind softened to a low, haunting moan, threading through the trees like the breath of some ancient beast. Snow piled higher, burying the forest in a cold, suffocating embrace, but Rex didn't falter. His body curled tighter around Sophia, a fortress against the merciless air. Frost crusted his fur, stiffening his ears, but he didn't shift. His mission was singular, sacred, her survival. She whimpered once in her sleep, a faint, broken sound that snapped his eyes open. He nosed her cheek, feeling the shallow flutter of her breath, weak, but there. He rested his muzzle against her forehead, a silent vow to keep her tethered to life. He'd done this before, pulled souls from the jaws of disaster, found the lost in places where hope had long faded, but never a child this small, this alone. Time stretched into an eternity, the wind hissing and pausing in cruel rhythm. His muscles ached from the stillness, his throat raw from barking, but he refused to yield. Every so often, he let out another call, quiet, sharp, deliberate, each sound a stab of pain he ignored. Someone had to hear. Deep in her haze, Sophia stirred, her tiny hand twitching against his fur. It was the smallest motion, but it ignited a spark of hope in Rex's chest. He licked her face gently, a soft encouragement. Stay with me, little one. The forest offered no comfort, no rescue, just an endless expanse of white. But Rex gave more: presence, resilience, an ironclad refusal to let go. As snow crept higher, blurring their shapes into the landscape, he held his ground. He'd faced war zones and wilderness, noise and silence, but nothing tested him like this quiet war against the cold. And he wouldn't lose, not to the storm, not to the night. Dawn broke behind a wall of slate-gray clouds, casting the forest in a pale, lifeless sheen. The wind had quieted to a murmur, but the damage was done. Snow blanketed the world in a suffocating hush, erasing trails, silencing cries. Emma staggered on, her legs trembling with exhaustion, her breath ragged in the biting air. Her gloves were soaked through, her cheeks stung red and raw, but she couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. She'd been calling Sophia's name for hours, her voice a hoarse rasp, her hope fraying at the edges. Beside her moved Ethan Steele Walker, a broad-shouldered man with a weathered face and eyes that missed nothing. A former ranger and Rex's handler, he'd heard of Sophia's disappearance at first light and joined the search without a second thought, driven by loyalty to Emma and a gnawing worry for his missing dog. He spoke little, but his movements, sharp, relentless, purposeful, carried the weight of a man who'd seen too much and still kept going. The search party fanned out across the wooded edge of town, their shouts echoing through the trees, checking ravines, peering under thickets. The cold bit deeper with every step, the white expanse yielding no clues, until a voice cut through the haze. "Over here!" Emma spun, her heart lurching as she stumbled blindly toward the sound, her legs moving on pure instinct. Her mind churned with dread, conjuring the worst: Sophia lost forever, swallowed by the storm. She reached a small clearing and stopped dead. There, nearly buried beneath a drift, was a mound, no, two shapes, entwined. She dropped to her knees, clawing at the snow with numb, frantic hands. Her fingers brushed fabric, then a mitten. "Sophia. Baby, please," she gasped, brushing snow from her sister's face. Pale, cold, but alive, her chest rose faintly, a whisper of life. Emma pulled her close, cradling her, feeling the fragile warmth still clinging to her small body. Then her gaze shifted to the dark form curled around her, Rex, his fur caked with frost, his massive frame still but his eyes flickering open at the sound of her voice. "Rex," she choked, her voice breaking with awe and relief. "You saved her." Ethan knelt beside them, his hand resting on Rex's flank, feeling the slow rise and fall of his breathing. No words passed between them, not yet. The moment didn't need them. Together, they lifted Sophia, Emma clutching her sister to her chest, Ethan supporting Rex, who rose with a limp, his strength nearly spent but his spirit unbroken. The storm had taken everything: warmth, light, certainty, but it couldn't take their hope. Now, they were bringing her home. The hospital room was a quiet sanctuary, filled only with the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor and the soft sigh of winter wind brushing the windows. Sophia lay cocooned in thick blankets, her small body dwarfed by the sterile bed. Her cheeks, once tinged blue, had begun to flush with a faint pink. She was safe, fragile, weak, but alive. Emma hadn't left her side, curled in a chair with one hand wrapped around Sophia's tiny fingers. Her eyes were rimmed red, a mix of exhaustion, fear, and unspoken gratitude. There were no more tears to shed, just a quiet, fierce relief that her sister had come back to her. Rex lay on the floor nearby, his grizzled fur cleaned of frost, his paws checked for damage by the medical staff. They'd offered him a blanket, a corner to rest, but he'd refused, settling instead as close to Sophia as the bed allowed. Even in sleep, His ears twitched at her every stir, his loyalty a constant, living thing. Ethan visited often, more than often, really. He came each morning and evening, always with something in hand: warm tea for Emma, a new plush toy for Sophia, a steady presence for them all. He didn't say much, but his quiet carried weight, grounding them in the chaos of recovery. One night, as the world outside darkened into stillness, Emma stepped into a hallway to find him waiting with 2 steaming cups. "She's stronger than most adults I've known," he said, offering one to her. Emma took it, her fingers brushing his, a faint smile tugging at